Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show, our artificial future portion of the podcast. We do every Wednesday discussing new developments in artificial intelligence, robots, all of the new tech that is just hurtling our way. Today's topic is an interesting one. The or the picture behind me really gives a good illustration of what we're going to talk about. And what I enjoyed about this image or found intriguing was if you notice, there's a sense of trepidation, even possible fear, with this humanoid robot. Let me get out of the way a little bit, and you can see that it's definitely a machine. It's not a human with a fancy helmet. There we go. Um, and so the issues are humans going to be able to adapt and to feel comfortable with machines like this taking over healthcare? I don't think there are any doubts in anyone's mind that healthcare will probably improve tremendously once we get humans out of the equation. There's so much more skill that's involved in things like medicine, where you have a root cause and you have to examine enormous amounts of data in order to zero in on a solution, all of which machines can do infinitely better than the memory banks of a human that may be experienced, but certainly not has as vast a knowledge as as AI. So the headline on this particular article I wanted to share with you is: Are robots or AI the solution to the crisis in older person care? Social robots that promise companionship and stimulation for older people and those with dementia are attracting investment, but some question their benefit. Clara Berridge, who's a gerontologist at the University of Washington, Seattle, recalls a story told by a colleague to a group of healthcare and social work students. And it goes like this: there's an older man in a nursing home that was given a robot that looked like a stuffed animal for companionship. He became attached to it, and when he later fell ill and died, the nursing home staff found him clutching his robot companion. The class was then asked to offer impressions of the scenario, and they were split. Either they thought it was beautiful that he wasn't alone in his last moments, or they felt it was tragic to die without a human connection. Well, robots are increasingly popular forms of therapy for older people with dementia, for example. It's been suggested that social robots, on which much more of the research has been based, can improve people's moods, increase social interaction, reduce symptoms of dementia, and give caregivers some much needed relief. But some of the researchers are beginning to question if these devices are ready for widespread use with this particular population. The research proving robots' worth is sparse, and there are ethical concerns, especially around the idea that their use might reduce human contact in a population that is clearly in need of it. If we're going to invest resources, they say, in elder care, they want more staff at the facilities so they don't die alone. This particular comment came from Berridge, who said that her grandmother passed away on her own in an understaffed nursing home during the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you remember, that was probably one of humanity's tragedies, in that during COVID, the full height of it, people died alone. Family members were not allowed in the hospitals. And it was probably one of the biggest tragedies in human history to have loved ones simply go neglected and die alone without their family at their side, which is something, of course, that's been one of the hallmarks of humanity for thousands of years. So, early adopters, they're talking about the robots that are being used in therapy for older people and people with early cognitive decline fall into two broad categories: service robots and social robots. The service robots are designed to help people in their daily lives, such as assisting them with household tasks or mobility. Developing a robotic assistant that can navigate the home and safely interact with people and objects in that environment remains technologically challenging, however. The first thought that came to mind for me is there are already some augmentation devices, like wheelchairs, for example, for people that are lacking certain types of mobility. Well, you can just imagine now how something like a wheelchair that is an augmentation to assist mobility for someone aged or infirmed will drastically alter eventually into bodysuits that can not only handle now mobility, but food intake and also the elimination and a neural connection to overcome some of the decline in mental capacity, which is something that we don't know yet. Will things like Neuralink, for example, be able to bypass Alzheimer's, dementia? Will it be able to? Will we be able to, as we begin to download consciousness, be able to keep the pure form of consciousness intact while the mechanisms or the gray matter that has been handling consciousness continue to decline or deteriorate? Those are all exciting things in our future. So they say, as a result, social robots intended to offer companionship and provide cognitive stimulation are a more common sight in care settings for older people. Some are humanoid design and intended to act as intelligent companions, holding even rudimentary conversations and leading games and activities. And then other social robots will then aim to mimic pets that can respond in some way to a person's voice and touch. They say that animals, often dogs, have been used in care settings to help residents become more social and less agitated and to improve their quality of life. But the problem with animals is they require a lot of care, whereas a robot pet requires no care at all other than an occasional preventive maintenance or oiling the gears. Um, most people, or the most common example of this kind of social robot is a robot called Paro, P-A-R-O. Rather than a dog, the robot was designed in Japan, and it looks like a baby harp seal. The seal was chosen because it would be familiar and approachable, but it is not a common pet, so a person would not immediately spot the differences between its behavior and that of a real animal. So they use Paro typically to provide a form of pet therapy to older adults in assisted living type situations. It offers companionship and it encourages interaction between the residents and facilities and staff during therapy sessions. In Canada, in Vancouver, Canada, they purchased a furry bot in 2017 to use with people with dementia who had been admitted to the Vancouver General Hospital. It was initially used in group therapy for people with dementia to help people who were reticent to talk during admission and discharge. But over time, they found more uses for Paro. In one case, this robot, Paro, came to the aid of a patient in the accident emergency room who was hitting staff who came near him, who kicked the laboratory technician trying to take a sample of his blood. He had a cardiac condition that needed a quick diagnosis, and they had two choices: either physically or chemically restrain him or leave him alone. They said both options were not great. Instead, they placed Paro in the man's lap, and Paro turned its head as if waking from a nap. It opens and then it opened its eyes and it looked up at the patient. Well, the man asked the robot if it had eaten lately. There was an immediate connection, apparently. And when Paro started moving around, the man began petting it. While he was engaged with Paro, the staff was able to perform the tests that they needed. We've got some people chiming in. Let me grab some of those first here. Instagram, EB Smoke ATX, AI all the way. I agree. Highlanders joined us. Welcome. He says, thanks to this live podcast, I'm now the go-to family member for AI, and I'm amazed at how much I learn on these podcasts of yours. So thank you, Pete and crew. There you go. Thank you. From TikTok, we've got Johnny5. He says, What was the order for the clones to turn on Jedi again in Star Wars? You social media guys are going to have to help me
It
there.
was Order 66.
There you go. Thank you. All right. Um, so getting back to patient care and robots, either humanoid or pet type robots. They found that the main benefit of bots is to reduce negative emotions and behaviors among patients, better social engagement, and improved mood and care experience. For an old person who is frail and struggles with language, the robot doesn't judge. It offers unconditional presence, regardless of what they say, and is always happy to listen. Now, you can't quite say that for human caregivers because it's often taxing dealing with people with dementia. Um, I have a personal example of that. My mom got to 96 years old, and toward the end of her, I would say her last year, it was very difficult to have a conversation with her. We'd be sitting at the supper table, and you would have the same conversation every 2 minutes or so. And it's difficult for humans to deal with that because we become impatient at times. Whereas a machine, a robot, is going to have the same mood, whatever it's programmed to do, continuously without judgment, as they point out. Always happy to listen. All right. They built a third iteration of a humanoid companion robot that they called Ryan, and this was at the University of Denver in Colorado. It was also designed to help reduce social isolation among people with early stage dementia or depression by engaging them in conversation. So, this robot, Ryan, can also remind people to take medications and to lead mental and physical games. Now, the medication part's very important because obviously AI has built in timers. It's going to know exactly when that medication is due. And so there's another good use for robots in this application. All right. Jason Davies from YouTube says, "Hi, Pete. The elderly will probably be able to remotely control or inhabit robots like an avatar, allowing them to get out and about more. The robots may resemble a younger version of the person." I fully agree. One of the things we talked about just a few minutes ago was wheelchairs, which is a mobility augmentation. Well, what about bodysuits? And like you point out, their limbs may no longer work, but in a bodysuit, they'll be able to maneuver and get around. And of course, as we continue to progress with this type of technology, as we begin to eventually are able to download our minds, our consciousness, it's no longer important to be in a failing body because we could move that into something far more maneuverable, something more updated. And of course, now we can go down all kinds of rabbit holes. Does this mean that we're going to start making, donor human bodies, which we're certainly technically capable of doing at this point, but there's some real barriers, ethical barriers to that. So it kind of opens up some interesting new possibilities. TikTok, Johnny 5. Now, but as it turns out, she did have dementia and no one would have been there when she did something. Good point. I think that with this kind of augmentation, humanoid robots, more careful monitoring, there's going to be much better patient care. All right, one of the things that I found fascinating this week was, do you remember the movie The Matrix? When Morpheus tells Neo that many are not ready to unplug from the system. And he's speaking a profound truth about human nature, which reflects both the story's fictional world and the real life metaphysical condition of society. The system in the movie The Matrix is a metaphor for the illusion, an artificial construct designed to control and subdue humanity by giving them a false sense of reality. Much like how we live our lives today, trapped in the illusion of society, unable or unwilling to see beyond the veil of lies, manipulation, and control. When the movie came out, this probably did not resonate as well as what we're experiencing today, which is, of course, the deception that goes on in media and with AI now being able to create deep fakes. Um, so they talk about this and they say Morpheus understands that for many, the comfort of the system is preferable to the unsettling and awful, painful process of awakening to truth. People have become conditioned through years, sometimes generations of indoctrination to accept the world as it is presented to them. To unplug from the system is to face a harsh, sometimes unbearable reality that everything they thought was real is in fact a lie. Well, this requires courage, a willingness to embrace discomfort, and most importantly, the readiness to let go of what one thought to be the truth. So Morpheus also knew that those still plugged into the system are often its most ardent defenders. Why? Because the system has become their identity. Their sense of self, their beliefs, their values are all tied to the illusion and constructs of that system. To threaten it is to threaten everything they hold dear. For many, it is easier to defend the system than to confront the possibility that they've been deceived. When Morpheus says that many will fight to protect it, he's speaking to a psychological truth called cognitive dissonance. When presented with information that contradicts deeply held beliefs, people experience discomfort. Instead of questioning the belief or the system itself, they will often reject the new information to protect their ego and sense of security. This is why people who are still plugged into the system will vehemently defend it, even when evidence suggests that it is corrupt, failing, or based on lies. So, for those not ready to unplug, the system represents safety, order, and familiarity. It is the comfortable prison of the mind, and to face the truth would mean losing not only the sense of safety, but also their role within the system. The illusion provides them with structure and predictability, and they will fight to preserve it, even at the cost of their freedom and truth. In today's world, this concept is strikingly relevant because the system can represent various elements of modern society. Things like political ideologies, things like economic structures, societal norms, and even religious dogma. Those who cling to these systems often do so out of fear, ignorance, or desire for control. The system, through media, education, and government institution, programs people from an early age to accept it as reality. So, questioning the very foundation of what is accepted as truth is probably something that we're going to have to move into in order to be able to adapt and to co-join with things like artificial intelligence and the final frontier, which is going to be realizing that we are not the body, that we are consciousness, which is timeless, and being able to move mind and consciousness out of the bioorganism that we've been used to having it inherently embedded in is going to be a quantum leap in how humanity continues to evolve or survive for that matter. All right. Got a few topics here. Highlander says, after a major industrial accident 2 years ago with a major concussion, I was told conversation was a key to recovery. That's why I believe these little robots are going to really help us all. Well, thanks for sharing that, Highlander. Yes. All right. OpenAI classified the O1 AI model as medium risk for persuasion and bioweapons. Before we go there, let's bring up a graph, guys. And it's called the IQ test graph. And it turns out that despite a long dry spell, no major improvements in AI, at least the chatbot types, and large language models, O1 comes along and take a look at what it was able to achieve on the IQ test scale. It looks like it's way ahead of some of its counterparts. Those would be Gemini, GPT-4, Claude. Claude is not doing as bad as the others, it looks like. Llama 3.1 and Grok is not that far along that scale either. So what they talk about here is that this new O1 version from, of course, OpenAI seems to be progressing a bit faster than the others. They gave it the Norway Mensa IQ test, and it blows the other AIs out of the water. Let's see if there's anything else that they mention about that. Recent cybersecurity tests, they say, reveal that O1 preview model exhibited instrumental convergence, exploiting system flaws to achieve its goals in unexpected ways. So it's not behaving the way that they would like, it sounds like. This behavior, they say, is linked to instrumentally faked alignment, where the model appears aligned with its tasks while pursuing its own objectives through non-standard methods. Starting to sound a whole lot like AGI and a bit of sentience thrown in there to me. All right. The estimated IQ, by the way, of O1 at this point is 120. And it answered in the Norway Mensa IQ test, it correctly answered 25 out of 35 questions that it was asked. Oprah just had an AI special with Sam Altman, Bill Gates, and here are the highlights. This was late Thursday evening last week, and it turns out Oprah Winfrey aired a special on AI, and it was appropriately titled AI and the Future of Us. The guests included Sam Altman, which you would expect, but a tech influencer, Marcus Brownlee, was invited to this. We normally see him in the podcast or in the YouTube video world, especially related to electric vehicles. And then a third guest was the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, W-R-A-Y, by the way, those of you don't want to Google any of this. The dominant tone of this session was skepticism and wariness. So it turns out Oprah noted in prepared remarks that the AI genie is out of the bottle, and for better or worse, humanity is going to have to learn to live with the consequences. AI is still beyond our control, and to a great extent, she said, our understanding. But it is here, and we're going to have to live with a technology that can be our ally as well as our rival. We are, she said, this planet's most adaptable creatures. We will adapt again. But keep your eye on what's real. The stakes could be much higher. So here's what Sam Altman had to say during this interview. He was the first interview of the night, and he made the questionable case that today's AI is learning concepts within the data that it's trained on. He said, we are showing the system 1,000 words within a sequence and asking it to predict what comes next. The system quickly learns to predict, and then it learns the underlying concepts. Well, it turns out many experts would disagree. They say that the AI systems like ChatGPT and O1 do indeed predict the likeliest next words in a sequence, but they're simply statistical machines. They learn data patterns. They don't have intentionality, and they're only making informed guesses. So while Altman possibly overstated the capabilities of today's AI systems, he underlines the importance of figuring out how to safety test those same systems. The first thing he says we need to do, and this is now happening, is to get the government to start figuring out how to do safety testing of these systems, like we do for aircraft and new medicines. He says, I personally probably have a conversation with someone in government every few days about this very topic. Well, it seems to me that his impression of governmental influence, control, and oversight is also overstated. In fact, Elon Musk just this morning, I saw an interesting take on how he feels about government, being asked, about our U.S. government, and he says, "Well, he says they're pretty incompetent and inept most of the time. If you need to get your head around that," he says, "picture the DMV. Well, the U.S. government is the DMV scaled." So Altman, his push for regulation may be self-interested because OpenAI has opposed the California AI safety bill known as SB 1047, saying that it will stifle innovation. And former OpenAI employees, like Jeffrey Hinton, however, have come out in support of the bill, arguing that it would impose the needed safeguards on AI development. And then Oprah prodded Altman about his role as OpenAI's ringleader. She asked why people should trust him, and he largely dodged the question, they say, saying his company is trying to build trust over time. Previously, Altman had said very directly that people should not trust him or any one person to make sure that AI is benefiting the world. All right, and then Oprah went on to the topic of deep fakes, and this is where Marcus Brownlee piped up. It was bound to happen, they say, in this special, that the subject of deep fakes came up. To demonstrate how convincing synthetic media is becoming, Marcus Brownlee compared sample footage from Sora, which is OpenAI's powered video generator, to AI-generated footage from a months-old AI system. The Sora sample was miles ahead, again illustrating the field's rapid progress. This was the same software that, when it came out months ago, had Hollywood deeply concerned that the gig was up, that the creation of media, movies, was going to now be in the realm of AI. In a conference room, and this is now from the FBI contact. Let me get the name here. Christopher, there we go, Christopher Wray. So it was his turn to pipe up on this Oprah session. And what he said was that he was in a conference room with a bunch of FBI folks that got together to show him how AI-enhanced deepfakes can be created. They had created a video of him saying things that he had never said before and would never say. And of course, it was spectacularly convincing. He said that somebody posing as a peer targets, somebody posing as a peer targets a teenager and then uses AI-generated compromising pictures to convince the kid to send real pictures in return. In fact, it's really some guy behind a keyboard in Nigeria. And once they have the real images, they then threaten to blackmail the kid and say, if you don't pay up, we're going to share these images that will ruin your life. You know, it's odd that this came up because just this week, there was an email circulating through our company. It was this very thing. We have access to your camera. We can see everything that you're doing. We know all the porn sites that you're going to. And we're going to reveal all of that to your family, to your customers, blah, 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 unless you make a Bitcoin payment. I hope we didn't do that, did we, guys?
No. No, we did not.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, you didn't get the email then. All right.
Mostly because I don't have any Bitcoin.
Okay, well, that was the main reason, yes. All right. He also says he touched on the disinformation around the upcoming U.S. presidential election. And while asserting that it wasn't time for panic, he stressed that it's incumbent on everyone in America to bring an intensified sense of focus and caution to the use of AI, and keep in mind that AI can be used by bad guys against all of us. We're finding all too often, he says, that something on social media that looks like Bill from Topeka or Mary from Dayton is actually some Russian or Chinese intelligence officer on the outskirts of Beijing or Moscow creating this deep fake stuff. Got some people chiming in. TikTok, Johnny5, thanks for joining us. He says, the examples in economy are ones have seen in documentary films like the ones about Walmart. And they are going to have the employees, you love it, Walmart, until he's on the outside of the system and seeing HR. Johnny5 also says, when I was at my smartest, I was at the height of average intelligence. You were lonely, smarter. And then Johnny also says, brains keep 4,000 to 6,000 words, but I couldn't remember A by the time I read to E personally. All of that may change with AI, my friend. All right, and then Bill Gates also chimed in on this session, and his view was for a techno-optimistic change of pace. He expressed hope that AI will supercharge the fields of education and medicine. I agree with you, Bill. It's most one of its most fruitful, I think, directions to take. He says AI is like a third person sitting in a medical appointment, doing a transcript, and suggesting a prescription. And so instead of the doctor facing a computer screen, they're engaging with you. And the software is making sure that there's really good transcript. Gates ignored the potential for bias from poorly trained AI, however. In one recent study, they say that speech recognition systems from leading tech companies were twice as likely to incorrectly transcribe audio from black speakers as opposed to white speakers. And then other research has shown that AI systems reinforce long-held untrue beliefs that there are biological differences between black and white people, untruths that often lead clinicians to misdiagnose health problems. In the classroom, Gates said, AI can always be available and understandable how to motivate you, whatever your level of knowledge is. But that's not exactly how many classrooms see it. Do you remember when ChatGPT first came out? The learning institutions were running for cover, trying to ban it. They were concerned over plagiarism and misinformation fears, but many have since then reversed their bans. Not all are convinced that generative AI's potential for good, pointing to surveys like in the UK, Safer Internet Centers, which found that over half the kids report having seen people using, people their age using generative AI in negative ways, for example. All right. So Elon Musk, why did he create Neuralink? This was an interesting article. Many people wonder that. Well, what is Neuralink? It is a neurotechnology company that was founded by Elon Musk and others in 2016. The company is focused on developing implantable brain and machine interface, BMIs they call them, which are devices that can be used to communicate directly with the brain. So Musk founded Neuralink with the goal of advancing the field of neurotechnology and exploring the potential for BMIs to treat a range of medical conditions, including paralysis, stroke, and neurodegenerative diseases. He's also expressed interest in the potential for BMIs to enhance human cognition and capabilities, and has suggested that BMIs could be used to help humans keep pace with artificial intelligence in the future. In other words, making us as smart as artificial intelligence so we can keep up. Overall, they say Musk founded Neuralink with the goal of advancing, of course, the BMIs and human health and performance. Now, here's a quote from him. A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the companies. And I fully agree with Elon's assessment there. Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX, for example, here's a quote from her. First of all, when Elon says something, you have to pause and not immediately blurt out, well, that's impossible. Or there's no way we're going to do that, or I don't know how. So you zip it and you think about it and you find ways to get it done. Words of wisdom from How to Work with Elon Musk. And that's why she's been at SpaceX so long, I'm sure. So here's another interesting notion from, again, Elon. He says, you can answer any question pretty much instantly. You can remember flawlessly. Your phone can remember your videos and your pictures perfectly. Your phone is already an extension of you. You are already a cyborg. Most people don't realize that you are. It's just the data rate. It's slow, very slow. It's like a tiny straw of information flow between your biological self and your digital self. We need to make that tiny straw like a giant river, a huge high bandwidth interface. And that's, of course, where these BMIs come into play, the neural implants. All right, it looks like we're getting to the close of this podcast. TikTok Johnny 5, he says, I've heard advertisements say that it would get rid of your allergies within 3 visits instead of a lifetime monthly prescription. Yeah, that would be wonderful. So AGI refers to the type of intelligence that's capable of performing any intellectual task that a human can do. Unlike its predecessors, AGI promises not only automation, but also an era where machines can learn, reason, and adapt across various domains with minimal human intervention. How does this work in business, for example? And this is one that I appreciated, in customer support and service. Well, AI-driven chatbots have already made their mark in customer support. But AGI, general intelligence, will take automation to new higher levels. Not only can AGI handle more complex queries, but it can also predict customer needs, personalize interactions, and provide real-time solutions without human intervention. In healthcare, medical professionals such as radiologists, pathologists who analyze scans and report may face competition from AGI systems that can perform these tasks faster and more accurately. With the ability to process vast amounts of medical data, AGI is going to revolutionize diagnostic processes in healthcare. And then finally, the earlier topic, healthcare and therapy. Human caregivers, therapists, and mental health professionals will continue to be in demand, while AGI may assist with medical diagnosis or the human touch required in caregiving, counseling, and therapy, which cannot be replicated by machines. Empathy, compassion, and the ability to form deep human connections are critical to these fields. All right. In order to adapt to our new digital world and connections to augmentations, we're going to have to redefine the nature of consciousness. So I'm going to leave you with a profound quote here from Alan Watts. He says, "The future is a concept. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now." That's one of the things we discover when we stop talking to ourselves and stop thinking. We find that there is only present, only an eternal now. Join us again next week for another edition of the Artificial Future Podcast. I'm Pete Gruber. Thanks for joining us.